This is a better way. Man Search for Meaning is probably one of the best books I have read. And I read this book many, many years ago by a man called Viktor Frankl. It was an account of how the German Holocaust, right? It was a detailed account of everything that happened um, in the Holocaust. And one of the interesting things I found about that book was how Victor narrated what he went through, um, and the entire gas chamber. It's a book that I by all means recommend. And I it was one of the research books that completely changed my perspective about this question that I have heard many, many times, whether it's in a therapy session or it's just in everyday conversation with friends or colleagues or just random conversations, even probably online or something. That question: why do bad things happen to good people? So, welcome to today's episode, and I'm going to be I wouldn't call it an explanation, but I'll just call it an exploration of this very difficult and controversial question. And my attempt today is really just to unpack this question, not to really give simple answers, for for us to really find perspective, healing, and maybe even find a way forward. So we'll reflect on what happens when we believe that the goodness that should automatically shield us from life pain is not there. What do we do? How do we go from there? But I by all means recommend that book, Mankind's Search for Meaning. It's a beautiful book. And after you reading that book, I'd like you, if you maybe read the book, to just tell me what you think or what you learned from that book. And I'll be glad to hear your thoughts. So I mean, the question has always been one that is very controversial. And when tragedy strikes, right, what exactly do we expect? Um, Take for example, this question often comes up when tragedy strikes someone who is kind, who is selfless, or probably who is even faithful. And quite frankly, it shakes us all. I mean, it has shaken me as well. Is life fair? Is there a God? And it all brings our morality to a point of trying to really question whether is this all worth it? Is this all worth it? Like, I don't know if you've ever been in this particular situation, but it's something that I have always been very, very curious about. And this curiosity then led me to further explore, right? And I began to realize that deep within us, maybe as a result of culture, upbringing, um, maybe our religious orientation, and a couple of other things. Because, like I've told you every time, our minds, our life is often shaped by our significant emotional experiences, our upbringing, and our environment. These things shape who we are. And one thing I began to realize is that there's such a thing called justice bias. And what exactly is justice bias, right? Like, when I first came to the realization of this concept called justice bias, it made sense. And as I dug deeper, I began to understand a lot more why we think the way we do. So, what exactly, is this justice bias? It is that we instinctively link good behavior to good outcome, which means that if I do everything right, bad things should not, cannot, must not happen to me. Now, I've talked about the dangers of the must, the shoulds, the it's, in previous episodes. If you've not listened to that episode, I'll really encourage you to find it and listen to it. And it talks about our cognitive distortions and the silent and the hidden rules that, sort of hurt our lives. Find it and listen to it. But then, justice bias is that we believe that because I am good, therefore good things only must happen to me. It is the link between good behavior and ultimately good outcome. No, so this ideology has its root in a just world hypothesis. A just world hypothesis is that if I am good, then I will be rewarded for being good with only good things. And if I am bad, I will be rewarded with punishment. And I want to be careful to just stop here and say that it can be painful. I do not minimize in any way the multiple questions because I have also been there and I have asked these questions. I am still, exploring, but I do not minimize the question that could be in the mind of someone who's just gone through a painful grief where, a family member got robbed and in the process, was shot to death, and or someone was bullied and a property was taken from them by someone much, much, much more powerful. These are just examples of what I would call bad behavior, right? And then it does appear that this person just gets away with it and justice is really never served. I'm not here to minimize that. And the essence of this particular podcast and episode today is not to minimize your pain or to discredit your feeling. Your feelings are valid, you know, your model of the world is valid. My attempt today is to just ask questions and see where those questions lead us, right? Now, take for example, the belief that goodness is a shield against suffering is comforting. I kid you not. The belief that if I do good, if I am good, right? If I do everything right, therefore I must receive a just reward and only good things is comforting. It has its cognitive function because it sets us in a place of feeling like there is cause and effect, right? There's actions and there's consequences for action. It covers that particular rule or that cognition or that thought pattern or that philosophical framework of life. But a problem, or I would say what it does not account for, is that it sets us up for pain. The only issue is that it is deferred pain. Let me take for example. So, if you're watching a movie right now, and probably it's a movie that you've watched before, and I do this with my wife all the time, right? When I'm probably watching a movie with her that I have watched before she did, and she's asking me, "Oh, what happened in this movie?" And I'm like, "Don't worry, watch the movie." She's sometimes, not all the time, quite frustrated. Like, just tell me. And then she, as it is today, she has absolutely given up. She doesn't ask me anymore. But I'm watching that movie for the second time with a complete understanding of what would happen. Not possibly, like I know exactly what is going to happen. I have an idea of it. She doesn't. I can see her a bit edgy or on the edge of her seat, trying to, okay, what's going to happen next and all that. But I'm not like that. Now, the idea that we will be excluded from pain, it's like my wife watching that movie, which is she's not sure, she has no idea that something is going to happen in the next scene. So when that thing happens, it has the capacity to surprise her more than it will surprise me. Probably even shock her more than it will shock me. I'm not shocked. Why? Because I'm prepared, because I know that it will happen. So while the idea that if we do only good things, we will be excluded from pain can be comforting, it shields us from pain and it only defers heartbreak. You know why? Because pain with dignity, pain with compassion, and pain with hope is far more better than the idea that we will never experience pain. Again, I go back to Viktor Frankl's book in Mankind's Search for Meaning. And when I read that book many, many years ago, one of the things that kept coming through my head as I read through that book was, as he was in prison as a doctor, did he ever think that he will for any reason, any day, see life as it used to be ever again? Because he didn't do anything that brought him to the position of being right in that concentration camp. He was not in that concentration camp because he had done something wrong. He was in that concentration camp and people were dying of frostbites and people were being sent into the gas chamber and all of that was happening. Did he forever think that he was ever going to see outside of that concentration camp ever again? You know, and I think that brings to question, what exactly was his disposition? What exactly was in his mind? Right? Like, what kept him going? Because there are many things that could have happened. He could have been filled with regrets because he didn't do anything wrong to be there. He could have been filled with, you know, pain and rage, which of course will be justifiable if you think about it, because I mean, he didn't do anything to be there, you know, but he is there. What then happens? Like, what happens? Like, I really, really will recommend you to read that book, because that book is one of the books that really helped me rephrase how I think about the concept of this question: how come good things happen really to bad people? Now, when we exempt ourselves, when we hold the idea or the belief that we will be excluded from pain because we are who we say we are, what begins to happen is that when life, which is life really, walks up to our doorstep and serves us our fair share of suffering, the first thing that happens is that we go into a self harm programming. We become very fragile. Our entire world collapses right in front of our eye in the face of this hardship. And that is simply because we did not expect this and hence did not prepare our minds for the possibility of something like this happening. Every time I fly, I keep asking myself, why do the cabin crew take their time to teach us what to do in case that plane goes down? Precautions, right? Precautions. I mean, nobody, gets on the plane and pray to have, a crash or an air crash or something. Like, nobody. I don't, for one. I want to get on a plane and obviously get to where I'm going to in one piece, like safe. I don't plan for eventualities, but what if, just what if that plane decides to go down and I do not know what to do in that moment. That is literally the difference between life and death. And someone else understands that an oxygen mask will pop out and they have to fasten their seatbelts, or there's an emergency, exit or something. That person stands a better chance of probably leaving than I will. We enter into self hate and self blame. Why is this happening to me? I must have done something wrong. That is the cornerstone of the fundamental flaw of justice bias. Again, like I said, I will take the time to stop here and re emphasize that this podcast, this episode today, does not in any way minimize the legitimate pain that people go through, that you have gone through as a result of someone, you know, taking something that rightfully belongs to you forcefully because they were more powerful than you are, or you having checked off all the boxes and then something still went wrong and the pain that you feel. No. But what justice bias does, because it fundamentally links good behavior to good outcome and bad behavior to bad outcome, you now start to think, I must have done something wrong for this thing to happen to me. And this is where a huge number of people that I have probably come in contact with, interacted with, or in most of the conversations where this has come up, this is where they get stuck. Because they fundamentally believe that because I am who I say I am, and as a good person, this should not be happening to me. And before you know what's happening, slide into resentment and bitterness. And this is where I have seen a lot of good, kind hearted, beautiful souls just erode into pain and resentment towards the world, towards community, towards life in general. And for those who believe in faith, just genuinely walk out on it. I once had a conversation, you know, with someone back many, many years ago. And I said to the person, I said, there are more people who have lost faith in their religious belief due to pain than those who have come to that point just from pure logic. I dare say that the amount of people who have come to that point from pure logic is a significantly small amount compared to the amount of people that have arrived there as a result of pain. And justice bias is at the heart of that belief, because there's a lot of bitterness, there's a lot of resentment. Why should this happen to me? It shouldn't be. I don't steal from anybody, I don't take anything from anybody. Then this shouldn't be happening to me. It shouldn't be happening to me. How then do we make progress? And I think that's where the crux of this episode really is today. What really then should be the way forward? Yes, Francis, okay, you've told me, right? Like, I'm not supposed to feel like because I'm a good person and only good things should happen to me. What then should I do? Hmm. I think the first step is to embrace with grace the inevitability of suffering. You know, life really is unpredictable, and pain is part of being human. Bad things don't happen to good people. Good and bad things happen to human beings. Because when you go back and think about it, you're not only experiencing just pain, you've experienced some good in your life, right? You have experienced some good. So embrace with grace the inevitability of suffering. What that also does is that it begins to bring you to a better understanding that suffering or pain, as the case may be, is a human phenomenon, which is that every single one of us experience pain one way or the other. Life deals us our fair share. And what this begins to do for you as a person is that it increases your empathy level. It helps you begin to see the world differently in such a way that you begin to have more grace within you to give people the benefit of the doubt, to cut people slack, to approach with caution. And then eventually you begin to find meaning from pain. You move from asking the question, why should this happen to me because I'm a good person, to I can't control this, but how will I allow this to shape me? What meaning do I want to draw from this event? Nothing means anything but the meaning that we give to it. So, therefore, when I experience pain, that pain only has the meaning that I choose to give to it. And I think that that is probably what helped Victor survive in the concentration camp, because he chose to reframe the pain and the experience. He chose to give it a completely different meaning. And I think that, if my memory serves me right, because I can't really remember the exact details of the book, it's been many years ago, that's one of the fundamental cornerstones as to why he survived and made it out. You know, it's a complete mind shift. You move from a place of pain, regret, resentment to a place of even self-compassion, and I even dare say creative expression, because when you experience pain through this lens, you begin to find more meaningful ways to share, to express this pain in such a way that it doesn't spread bitterness and further pain to the people around you. And everything that I've said can sound quite theoretical, can sound quite abstract, can sound quite far removed. I'm in the moment, I'm hurt, I'm in pain. What can help? And the first one I'd like to say is acceptance. You see, we suffer when we fight, we struggle to exempt ourselves from the happenstance of life. Acceptance is not to take a position of what will be, and that for every time something happens, you don't seek ways to prevent it from happening again. No, that's not what acceptance means. Acceptance in this context is that you come to terms with what has happened and you stop fighting it because it has already happened, and take learnings from it and take lessons and ask, what can I do to the best of my ability, because I'm also limited, that can maybe not completely eliminate the chances of this happening again, but that can reduce the chances of reoccurrence. But acceptance in this context is that I'm not resisting this. I'm not claiming that I'm above this. I'm just saying that, well, it's okay. It's one of those things. Life happens. The next thing really is community. You know, I'll stay a little bit on community because the value of community cannot be overemphasized. One of my senior friends and my He likes to refer to himself as my senior friend, but I would call him, you know, my senior colleague. He taught me something very powerful many years ago, and it was the concept of encouragement. And he said, you will have a community, and when a community chooses to encourage you, what they are doing is that they are covering you with their courage. So the word encourage in its etymological form means to cover you with courage. So in those moments, you do not have the strength to carry on. You do not have the strength to be courageous to charge towards life, to build resilience, like I've just been talking about. But you have a community of people who can be there for you, even in silence, when their silence can speak much more louder than even any verbal words that they can utter, right? So you need a community. You need to be in a space where people can cover you with their courage. You can allow them to be there for you. And another thing is compassion to self. I talked about it earlier, and I think that is just important for me to rephrase it and re emphasize it. Is because when these things happen, the first thing that the justice bias syndrome brings to mind is, I must have done something wrong. That's why this is happening. But compassion to self is the realization, or I'll call it the antidote to that, that says, it's not because I've done something wrong. That's why this is happening to me. It's not because I have really offended anybody or offended God or I have just stepped on toes or something is after me. Nah, it's not about me. It's not because of me. And the last but definitely not the least is journal, right? Seek therapy. If you're someone who believe it, who practices faith, have these things as anchors, because what they do is that they help you build resilience. As we come to the end of today's episode, right? Bad things happen to good people, not because life is fair or unfair, but because life really is complex, it's fragile, it's mysterious. The danger is in believing that our goodness will exempt us. That belief can break us, really. But when we embrace the truth that suffering is part of human story, we open ourselves really for compassion and a deeper kind of strength. So if you're going through something right now, and it seems like your world is closing in on you, just know this: your pain is not a proof of your failure. Your suffering does not really disqualify you from goodness. Nah. And quite frankly, you're not alone. If you'd like to process this, I'll be more than happy and glad to work this journey with you. Please reach out to me through any of my social media handles, or just drop me a comment in this particular episode. I'll be more than willing to walk through with you. And fundamentally, always remember to be kind to yourself. You know that I'm rooting for you. Cheers.